10, 9, 8, and I'm ready whenever you all are. Make sure I got.
I'm ready to go.
All right, give me a second. There we go. All right, I'm good. I just want to make sure everything was set.
So, I'm Scott. Aaron's here as usual. We're talking the 2014 NFL Draft for the Atlanta Falcons. We've got 9 picks to discuss. We've got Ben Allbright here like we did last year, talking about all the different picks and the fit for Atlanta. Welcome again, Ben.
It's good to be here, brother.
Yeah, we're going to make this an annual tradition. Ben Allbright.
There we go. There we go. I like that. I like annual traditions, especially if they involve alcohol, but I think this is an alcohol-free podcast, so.
I mean,
unless we're sponsored by Bonita Tequila, in which case I need to,
We're not this year.
Okay.
So they just got a free little plug, but whatever. We are gonna go each pick by pick. First round, everybody wanted to do. Well, not everybody. I wanted to see the Falcons trade up for Clowney. Maybe Aaron did want to, depending on compensation. I'm glad that they did one of the 2 options that I wanted. Like, I would have been happy had they traded up for Clowney, or I would have been happy had they stayed where they were and just gone with Jake Matthews. And they stayed where they were. Jake Matthews fell right into their laps, and they said, 15-year Ring of Honor left tackle, let's go. So I'm happy with that pick. Aaron, we'll get you on that one.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy with Jake Matthews' pick. Help solidify the offensive line. Hopefully Matt Ryan won't be laying on his back as much this season as he has been last season. And it's nice to see. The goal is eventually you want to see the Falcons be able to have Matt Ryan have like all day in the pocket like you see with Tom Brady or whatever. And we haven't seen the Falcons offense have Julio Jones and Roddy White and a good offensive line. It's like when the offensive line was good, it was just Roddy White. When the receivers were all good, the offensive line was terrible. So one of these days, we're going to get really good receivers and a really good offensive line, and I would love to see Matt Ryan play in that offense. So Jake Matthews helps us there.
Hopefully it's this year, and they finally decide to move Sam Baker to the right side. Ben, what are your thoughts on the pick?
I think it was the right pick overall. I think when you look at the options, if you look at trading up, what you have to give up to get the pass rusher versus what you get by staying put and getting the tackle, and then going with a volume approach to pass rushers later, I think it's the right pick. I think that it was the smart pick. You give yourself, pass rushers, while they are the valued position in the NFL, it's easy to find athletes later in the draft that you can try to coach up rather than offensive linemen, that are rushing the passer versus protecting the passer. So I think it was the smart pick. I think it was the right pick. It might not be the sexy pick, but it's the smart pick.
I have to agree with the idea of getting the volume. I wasn't on board with Jake Matthews initially as like, hey, we need to go get him, period. Like even if you have to trade up, get Jake Matthews, but having him fall to your lap at 6 is great. Rashid Hageman. I know that there's some mixed opinions about him. I read a couple things where it's like I like him, I don't like him, but for the most part it's I like him a lot, and I think that personality-wise he's what the Falcons need on the defensive line. So what are your thoughts on the pick, Ben?
Well, you get a high-energy, high-motor guy that's a raw ball of clay. This is a guy you can use inside on 4-man fronts. If you shift to a 3-man front, you can kick him to the 5 tech and kind of have him play that Justin Smith type role, similar to what the 49ers do. I think that I like the pick. I like the player. I think they're still trying to figure that whole line out there, that whole defensive line, and with the versatility that they're looking to go for this year with the interchangeable sets, 34, 43 over, kind of base look. I think he fits multiple fills multiple holes there. You can kick him inside or out depending on what you're doing. So I like the pick. It's just going to be a question of can he be a guy to set the edge in the run game when it comes down to it? Is he going to be strictly a pass rushing type? Is he going to be an every down player, or is this a guy who's going to be able to set the edge in the run game when you're given a 43 over or a 34 base look? That'd be my only concern.
I like him in the run game, though. I guess it's because I saw him a lot as a 3.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess if you do use him in that 34 and you're expecting him to stuff the run, you're going to be asking him to basically plug and take on double teams more than you're going to be asking him to actually set the edge.
Right. But can he be that guy? He's definitely an interior penetrator as far as a pass rusher goes, but can he be that guy when it comes to either plugging or to doing that? It just depends on the multiple, like I said, it depends on these multiple looks that they're looking to use, where they feel his home is as to how they'll use him.
Okay. Now, Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think Hageman's interesting because, what I've seen of him, he seems like he plays his best football when he's lined up outside of the 5-tech. And, he has that sort of length and that sort of frame that you look for in a 5-tech, classic 5-tech defensive end in the 334. And when he's played inside, I think he's a little bit miscast because he's so tall and he's so long that he kind of loses some of that leverage inside with, these 6'2", 6'3" guards that he's facing. And I think that's going to be a little bit of an issue for him playing inside at the next level because he's going to see similar size guards, but they're going to be a whole lot better. You look at guys like Andy Levitra, who's not a very big guy, but I've seen him block a guy like Vince Wilfork because he knows how to get leverage. And, he's the type of guy that would eat a guy like Hageman up alive if Hageman's playing inside. So one of the things with Hageman is, where is he going to be a couple of years from now? Is he going to be able to develop his game and be that sort of inside-outside player that Ben was talking about that Justin Smith is, that sort of guy that can just be a black hole in the middle of the line of scrimmage and just consume double teams and just set the line of scrimmage back 2-3 yards and make it impossible to run it up the middle? Maybe. I don't know. I guess I'm not too thrilled with that pick because I really wanted an edge pass rusher. And I think with Hageman, he's another 5 technique defensive end, just like Goodman, just like Jackson. And now you have 3 of those guys, which is fine. But, you don't really have that guy that can bring the heat off the edge. And so I'm a little disappointed with that pick just because I really thought that was the perfect spot to get a guy like a Tauchu, to get a guy like Van Noy, somebody that at least has a shot to being that sort of edge pass rusher that Osi Umenyiora is not.
Don't get me wrong. I love Jeremiah Tauchu, but I think that the pick of Hageman goes back to your philosophy that you posted on Twitter a couple weeks back of every 3-4 defense has a monster 5 technique.
Yep.
And Hageman, when he was up there standing next to Claude Humphrey, I was just like, man, did they really just pick the next Humphrey? Is that the possibility that they think they just did? And I think it's very possible that he is. I think he's got the same kind of frame. He may not be a 10-sack guy like Humphrey was, ever. He may at most be like a 6 or 7 sack and set the edge kind of guy. But at 5-tech, that's great. That's Richard Seymour right there at 5-tech. That's Justin Smith at 5-tech. Neither of those guys are 10-sack guys, but they're great Pro Bowl caliber players for the role that they do. So if he can do that, I think it sets the defense up. Like, he'll never be J.J. Watt. That's just not his style. That's not his game. J.J. Watt's a 5, 6, 7, 8-tech, really. Like, in that area. He's not... You rarely see J.J. Watt move over to the 3. Hageman is probably going to be a 3, a 5, maybe sometimes a 6, but that's about it. Sometimes he'll even play in the 1 just if they want that really quick line and do Hageman at 1, do Babineau at 3, have Massaquoi and like Starr out there. I think we're all going to be sleeping on Tyler Starr, or y'all are going to be sleeping on Tyler Starr. He's one of my favorites.
I'm not sleeping on him. I wanted Denver to take him.
I was glad Atlanta got him second to last pick of the draft. But we'll get to Tyler Starr later. I think the combination of Hageman and Starr will be a good one, though. Desmond Southward. Reach. Love his athleticism, but I'm just saying, he's a reach. He was not worth a third-round pick. If I'd have known that the first and third-round picks were going to be Southward and, Matthews, I would have said trade that third up to pick number 2 and take Greg Robinson. But I guess you kind of have to go with Southward. I'm sure he's a great guy off the field. I'm sure he's, exactly what they want. I'm sure they fell in love with him at the Senior Bowl, the same way they did with Hageman. But he's got to prove it. He's got to prove he was worth the pick. There's so much better value at safety. There was Terrence Brooks. There was I'm gonna let Aaron take over this one because I'm not happy with this pick.
I hear what you're saying, Scott. You look at sort of Southward's in that kind of lump of these guys that was sort of projected to go in rounds 4, 5, and 6, and a lot of these guys actually did wind up going in rounds 4, 5, and 6. These sort of, I guess, I don't know, second or third tier safeties, and so you feel like, well, if all you're going to get out of that pick is Desmond Southward, you could probably wait another round. And I think this kind of speaks to some of the issues the Falcons have had in recent years with some of their drafting. Really, since the draft has gone to the 3-day format, I think in the third round they've gotten a little antsy with some of these recent picks, like Akeem Dent and like Lamar Holmes, where these guys probably were projected to go a little later in the draft, and they kind of reached on them because they had a need at the position. They needed a safety. They needed somebody that could come in and back up Dwight Lowery, or at least compete with Dwight Lowery and potentially give them a starter down the line in Southward. But you're kind of looking at a situation where you probably could have waited to round 4 to get Southward. And if you had waited to round 4 and someone else had taken Southward, the guy that you could have gotten in round 4 probably would have been only slightly less or perhaps even better than Southward was. So I understand Scott's sentiment. I don't know if Ben, if you agree with that.
Well, it's a little different for me as an outsider looking in. I'm not a regular Falcons guy, so as an outsider looking in, here's what I see. I see a guy who's got great length. He's got the athleticism, and in a league that's looking for one high safeties, this is a guy that can transition back and forth between corner and being that one high free safety. I'm not, I don't know that I'm 100% sold on the pick. My personal philosophy is you draft starters in the first 3 rounds, and I don't see him as a starter right now. So that kind of presents an issue for me. But when you look at, what he brings to the table in a long-term plan, I get it. This is a guy who's versatile. He can fill 2 spots, free up an extra roster spot, and hopefully develop into that one high safety that they want. Given the Ricardo Allen pick later, it kind of seems like a bit of a force to me. It seems like this was their guy and they went for him too early. But, overall, I think the pick isn't bad. I just think maybe it was early.
I guess for me, I do like the potential that he has. And maybe, again, here's the thing about coaching the Senior Bowl. Sometimes you get a guy at the Senior Bowl, you like what he does, you like what he can possibly do. You get to see him in your scheme. And I think that's what it was, is they got to see him in their scheme at the Senior Bowl. And that's where they were like, well, we kind of like him for us. Unlike Akeem Dent, I think he actually does have potential to stick as a starter. I think he's closer to like a Thomas Deku type pick than an Akeem Dent type pick.
That's fair.
I can buy that, yeah.
And Lowery's that Eric Coleman start for a year at the position and then leave kind of guy. I could see that. I mean, because that's all Eric Coleman ever did. All right, 4th round, Devontae Freeman. I like the pick because I look at it as Jason Snelling's replacement. Snelling just retired. You need somebody who can come in and catch, block, and run out of the backfield. Devontae can do it all, and he's already from a 3-man rotation. He's not going to sit there and complain about being the 3rd man in a 3-man rotation in Atlanta. Because he was the 1st man in Florida State, but it took him 2 years to get there. So I think starting out, he's going to be perfectly fine as the third guy. He'll move up to the second guy next year. And then after that, maybe he'll be the first guy. Maybe he'll just be a long-term change of pace, 100-carry guy. But if he's getting 100 carries and 660 yards at Florida State, I mean, that's a guy who makes the most of all of his touches.
Yeah, I think I like Freeman. We share the same last name, so I will claim him as a cousin. He turns out to be a good player. But I think the thing with Freeman is, in a vacuum, I really like him. I see like the sort of Ray Rice potential that some people have compared him to. I think the only issue I have is here in Atlanta, he's kind of the same sort of, he fills the same sort of niche that Jacquizz Rodgers fills. And I think now you're in a situation where what happens if, Steven Jackson missed like 5-6 games last year? What happens if Steven Jackson misses a similar amount of games? I know he's been incredibly durable. Probably last year's an aberration, but it's a valid question. And so now you're stuck with two undersized running backs that aren't really, at least, maybe Freeman can develop into this down the road, but even Ray Rice didn't do anything as a rookie. I think he averaged like 2.4 yards a carry or like 50 touches or something like that. And so it's kind of like, okay, if Freeman develops down the road, great, wonderful, but he kind of is, at least in my mind, a little too similar to Jacquizz Rodgers. I would have preferred, and Scott and I talked about this last week when we were projecting picks, it was like they're looking at all these bigger, more bruising backs that seem to be in the Steven Jackson mold, like Jeremy Hill or like Storm Johnson or, Carlos Hyde. And it seemed like that, to me, would have been the better avenue. It's nothing against Freeman, but I just think in terms of what the Falcons need, because Jacquizz Rodgers is 24 years old. He's a really good third down back. He can play that role for this team for another 5 years. Steven Jackson is basically playing his last season in Atlanta. I don't think there's any chance he's going to be a Falcon beyond this season. And so that's the more immediate need. And I'm not 100% convinced that Freeman is going to be able to step up next year or the year after and fill the same role that Steven Jackson did. But, again, I do like Freeman a lot, so I don't know.
I think one thing that Thomas Dimitroff does like to do is he likes to look to next year's class. And if you look at next year's running back class, that's ridiculous. I mean,
yeah, that could be it. Something that bothers me, and maybe it's just the old school football guy in me, but running backs for me are 5'10", 220 pounds in the modern NFL. I mean, that's a running back, and I don't know what Dimitroff's thing is about having these small running backs like Quiz and like Freeman. Now, granted, Freeman doesn't have a lot of tread on the tire. He's a guy that can, he can come in and he doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on him, and that's always good, but. I just don't understand his love of these small, what I call sailbacks, these small pass catcher type, what I would consider a third down back. When you look at Quiz or when you look at Freeman, that's what I think he is. He's another third down back, and he's not going to be an egomaniac as far as platoon goes. He's had the platoon experience in the platoon situation, but the thing that Atlanta's missing on offense is that run game to suck the safeties up and come off play action. The offensive line has struggled, and that's contributed to that. But that's what you need. And I don't know that Jackson's that guy. He's kind of on his last legs, and it doesn't look like they've got anything in the pipe for the future as far as that between the tackles, power back that you're going to have. Now, Quiz has had success going between the tackles, but he's not a full season guy. That body will wear down on him.
I think. Well, I mean, when you're looking at Dimitroff, he's had 2 big running back signings, and then he's had 2 draft picks. So, yeah, Freeman and Quiz are his draft picks. Yeah, they're change of pace guys. But I think out of all the guys he's brought in for a long-term solution, I do think that Freeman's got the best shot of doing it so far. I just think that right now, the idea behind Freeman is he's the third back this year, he's the second back next year, and he's probably the change of pace guy from here on out. But if, for whatever reason, Steven Jackson's hurt, I think they're comfortable with the guys that they got on the line creating holes more than anything else. They've got a lot of smaller offensive linemen. Because when you're talking about 300-pound guys, there's no such thing as a small 300-pound guy. But I mean, you got 6'5", 305 Baker. You got big old Blaylock, but then you got 6'3", 300 Hawley, 6'5", 305 Asamoah, and then 6'5", 310 Matthews. So you've got a smaller line for the NFL. You've got a very quick athletic line. And if they do what they're supposed to and put Matthews at left and Baker at right, you might actually have a pretty good zone blocking line. And I think with the zone scheme, you can get away with the smaller, one-cut, good vision backs like Freeman, like Quiz. And, Aaron, maybe they were listening to us last year when we were praying for them to move to it.
Yep.
When we said, you know what, this offensive line's a zone blocking line. We need to see them do it. And if they move to a zone blocking line and it works, holy crap, we were geniuses. I do think they improved the pass blocking a lot, though.
Yeah, I mean, and I like what they've done with the line. The line's getting better, but I'm just saying that if you look over the last 2 seasons, that's been Atlanta's Achilles heel. Can't get a strong, consistent ground game going, and that's an interchange between the backs that they've had, whether that be Steven Jackson on his last legs and Michael the Burner Turner turn into Michael the Buffet Turner. But you got these smaller, quicker guys that'll work a lot better in a zone blocking system. These quicker guys will. You get a one-cut system, and they're great. But where's that grinder? Where's that salt away the lead at the end of the third, beginning of the fourth quarter, big body back? I mean, right now you count on Steven Jackson to be that guy, but he hasn't been healthy in the last couple of years, since his last year with the Rams. I just think Atlanta needs a bigger body back, and maybe they're looking for that in the next draft. I don't know. I don't see the future, but that's the one area I look at this offense. The one area I look at and I say, where is he? This is the piece that's missing to me.
Well, I know that we're doing mainly draft picks today, but they did bring in an undrafted free agent, Jerome Smith.
Okay.
And he's a unique fit. He is kind of that grinder. He reminds me a lot of Jason Snelling. So maybe they don't have Josh Vaughn on the roster this year, and instead they put in Smith. So
that could work. I didn't know about that signing yet, so sorry, Aaron. I didn't mean to step on you there.
No.
Go ahead. I didn't know about that signing. Was all I was saying.
No, I mean, I think if there could be a guy that could do it, it would be Jerome Smith. And yeah, he's a Syracuse guy, and it's an ACC back, and all the stuff that comes from that. But
what's wrong with the ACC backs?
Well, I mean, that's what I was going to say. Didn't you just were you just talking about one?
Well, no, I like Freeman. I'm just saying a Syracuse guy. Syracuse backs aren't exactly known for being great in the NFL. But that goes to school scouting instead of actual scouting.
DeLon Carter's going to make it money these days, I guess. Maybe.
I was at the East-West Shrine game with Tom Melton, and when Carter won the offensive MVP, Parker won the defensive MVP, and those were guys we'd been talking to all week, and he was just so happy, and I was like, man, this kid's going to take off in the NFL, and it just hadn't happened.
Who is this?
I'm sorry? Carter, yeah, DeLon Carter.
Yeah, he's done absolutely.
He was the offensive MVP of the Shrine game, I want to say 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, the Jacksons cut him.
Now, here's the scary one that everybody's kind of worried about off the field. Prince Shembo. There was that incident at Notre Dame. For me, because of how tough Dimitroff and Smith have been on character, the fact that they bring him in tells me they did a lot of research into this, and they feel comfortable. And if they feel comfortable, I'm just saying I feel comfortable. Now, on the field, he's a Ike Smith special teamer, or Ike Reese special teamer. He's going to play all 4 special teams. He's going to contribute there. And then as a linebacker, he'll be a good rotational guy long term, but I don't ever see him being the starter. I see him as a guy who eats up, 250, 300 snaps a year, and then plays great special teams. So he's great value. He's basically a Keen Dent, but you take him in the 4th round instead of the 3rd round, and you're a little bit okay with it because it's a comp pick.
That's fair. I'm pretty much the same way. with you on the off-field stuff. I'm not really comfortable with that whole situation, but you're right. The Falcons are a team that are known to be very in on character, and so the idea that they would give him a passing grade, they probably wouldn't do it lightly. So, that all being said, I agree with you basically with where you think Shimbo's going to be as a player. I think best case scenario, he's Stephen Nicholas, but more than likely, he's probably just going to be a special teams guy. I really like his motor. I think he's got that Chauncey Davis-like, high motor guy. He'll work hard on special teams and do that type of stuff. Being an impact defensive player, eventually maybe he'll get there. Like I said, maybe he'll get there like Stephen Nicholas, who didn't exactly hit the ground running when he was in Atlanta in '07. It took him a better part of 2 years before he really became anything worth a damn. So, I'm thinking Shimbo might be that guy. If not, he'll be a real good special teams player, and that's worth something, I guess.
I mean, for a late fourth, it's not that bad. But what are your thoughts, Ben?
I kind of like the pick. I think it gives the Falcons defense an attitude they may or may not have had. This is a guy that's, he's definitely going to be a day one special teamer, but when you look at what he can do right now, you can line him up outside. If you're coming in wide 9 concept, you line him up outside and let him go downhill after the passer. Just be brutal, be tough, be that hitter, be that disruptive guy that he is, and let him turn him loose. I think that the character things, some of that appeared a little overblown to me. If you look at the story and everything that happened, I don't want to get too much into it because I didn't do a personal investigation, but just kind of a cursory one. I think that he got blamed because he's the football player in the spotlight rather than maybe the whole story getting told. And it seems to me that there are a few teams that seem to feel that way. And if Atlanta, who's known to be thorough on character evaluations, approves, who am I to sit here and say, who am I to second guess that?
I mean, it makes it tough. It makes it really tough. Because we don't know what they know. We don't have the money to pay for that kind of background check that they paid for.
I wish I had that money.
Exactly. That's what happens when you own Home Depot for, 40 years. So, yeah. We'll move on from Shimbo. So you like his disruption off the edge. I can understand that. I do see him as mainly a special teams guy. Speaking of another guy I see as mainly a special teams guy, Ricardo Allen from Purdue. I don't think that this year he's really anything more than a special teamer. I think he's going to be the 5th corner to make the roster, and whoever loses the battle of Arenas and Wilson is going to get cut. But what are your thoughts on that, Freeman?
Yeah, I like Ricardo Allen because I like Robert McClain, and he reminds me a lot of Robert McClain. I like his ball skills. I think he's a really good zone corner. He's going to, be developed in that slot. And the Falcons have basically 3 smaller corners in McClain, Josh Wilson, Javier Arenas, all basically playing in their contract years. And so with Allen, you get a guy that is going to be under contract beyond 2014 because, like Scott said, he's pretty much a lock to make that 5th cornerback spot unless something crazy happened in training camp and preseason. And, I think he's a good player. I don't know, I think he's probably one of those guys that's going to be cursed to only have a lower ceiling in the NFL just because he's not that big and he's not that fast. And ultimately, there's only so much you can do in the NFL that's populated by guys like Julio Jones and Marquise Colston and Josh Gordon when he gets his act together. And, those types of guys, Alshon Jeffrey. And, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot against those guys when you're 5'9", 187 pounds. And so, I like Allen. I just wish, God had blessed him with more size and more speed, and I would like him a whole lot more. But he'll be a solid depth guy for the Falcons.
What are your thoughts, Ben?
Well, I mean, I like what Aaron said. This is just the first pick I didn't like. If you're a corner that doesn't have elite speed or doesn't have elite size, what are you doing in the NFL? He doesn't have the coverage instincts of Jason Verrett. He doesn't have the speed and the athleticism of Verrett. He's a good, solid guy in college, but when you bring him to the pro game, this is a depth guy at best. He's got no chance of cracking the starting lineup. Of course, the rest of his career, in my opinion. Contribute on special teams, I can see that, but this guy's just going to tie up a roster roster spot for a couple of years, and that's going to be it. I liked him in college. I liked him as a player, but he's not a guy I like in the NFL as anything more than, like I said, a roster filler. And you can't have that in the NFL. You can't have a guy who's just sitting there taking up roster space. He's not going to be there long.
Well, I mean, if you think Alford and Trufant and McClain are your top 3 guys, you really want depth for that nickel. And I think as a nickel, he's a really good fit. I think when you look at him as a potential starter, that's when you kind of get questionable, because Atlanta's not looking for a potential starter with Trufant and Alford and McClain as their top 3 guys. And I do think they end up re-signing McClain long term.
Right, and I get that. My philosophy on the situation is this: is when you're drafting players, you're not really drafting personally. You're not drafting for depth. You're drafting a guy you can build up to eventually be a starter or push the starters. You're drafting somebody. You make the roster better by putting guys at the top. You know what I mean? Or putting guys that can push the top and push those guys down. You don't make a roster better by putting guys in at the bottom to replace the bottom guys. So when I'm looking at that, that's my philosophy on it, and that's why I don't like the pick. Now, I'm not saying that he's not great as a depth guy or not good as a depth guy in the interim. I'm just saying that my personal philosophy on roster building, this doesn't mesh with that, and so that's why I personally didn't really care for the pick.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Ben. I like Allen as a player, but he's kind of just more of the same of what we had. The Falcons really need a big corner since they're facing pretty much every big receiver in the NFL this year. And Allen's not that guy, and they pretty much targeted nothing but 5'9" corners this whole offseason. And so I guess, similar to their fascination with smaller running backs, I guess they have a fascination with smaller corners. So.
Well, think about it like this: you're now going to get to face Kelvin Benjamin twice a year. That Buccaneers offense, where all the skill position players are going to be 6'5" or better, twice a year. And then you look at the Saints, who, outside of Cooks, who they brought in this year, mostly tall, big guys. Who's he going to cover? Who's he going to cover out there?
See, that I don't know, but that's why I like Trufant and Alford, because Trufant's basically 6 foot and Alford's right around 5'11", or sorry, 5'10". That's average NFL cornerback size, but
those guys have good length and good speed.
Great length, great speed, great verticals, and that's why I like Robert McClain. Great length, great speed, great vertical. If I told you Robert McClain was 5'9", you'd be like, "There's no way," because he plays like he's 6 foot.
Right. But then you get into this pick, you get into Allen, and this is a guy who's average across the board. He's good for college. He's a good college player. But when you take those measurables and you bring it over to the NFL, those are average measurables. And that's not a guy. Those aren't average measurables that the cornerback position doesn't succeed in the NFL. It just doesn't.
Well, that's where you get a guy like Devontae Glover-Wright, who they signed as a free agent, who could potentially take that last roster spot over him. I realize Atlanta's very big on, we drafted you, we invested in you. But if this guy shows up and looks like he did at Utah State the last couple of years, he could be a surprise. Now, I don't know if you've seen a lot of Devontae, if you've seen a lot of this guy, but he's not great, but he's got athletic potential. He's 6 foot tall, 174, runs a 4.36, has a 35-inch vertical, plays big. So maybe he can develop.
Maybe the Falcons see something here I don't. I mean, this is just, it's just one of those picks that was kind of a little bit of a head scratcher to me. And when I look at the overall, what was available and what you got out there and everything, and look at the overall, this is the pick I expect to be the first one off of the Falcons roster out of this draft class.
Oh, wow. See, I would have thought you'd say that about the next pick we're going to talk about. Good old Marcus Sproul out of Syracuse.
I like Sproul.
Sproul is Akeem Dent Part 2. Like, that's what I see. If you've already taken Akeem Dent Part 2 in the 4th round, why are you trading up for him again in the 5th round? I don't understand it.
The thing I like about Sproul is, he's like a classic Syracuse defensive player. He can run. They recruit athletes at Syracuse, at least on defense. Arthur Jones, other guys like that, and Sproul can run. I think he's probably faster than some of the safeties the Falcons have on the roster right now. So, I mean, that's good. I don't know how that's going to translate to the NFL because I watched him get swallowed up by pretty much every block that anybody ever got on him. But, he can run, so I guess that's going to bring something that, at least on special teams, he'll be the first one down to cover kicks or punts or whatever. So, that's a skill set. We'll see how that translates. He looks like he's, I guess the need there for the Falcons was they don't have a true weak side linebacker on their roster other than Joplin Bartu, and he's been playing mostly strong side for the Falcons. Sean Weatherspoon's entering the final year of his contract. I don't see Sproul as a insurance policy in case Weatherspoon walks, but at least you have a body there so that, I don't know, maybe miracle happens and Sproul becomes a really good player this year and gives you sort of the confidence that you can say, well, maybe we don't give, Sean Weatherspoon $40 or whatever $1 million because he's always injured. I don't know, but we'll see.
When they made that trade up and I saw Abbrederis on the board, I was like, man, I hope this is for Abbrederis. Because I feel like that would have been a much better use to the pick. Roddy White's heading into the final year of his contract. Harry Douglas. He's average starter at best, but, he's Harry Douglas. He's been here forever. Hester is not a starting wide receiver, so Abbrederis would have instantly been the number 4 and just been better value. And eventually, Abbrederis would have been a great number 2 for Julio. You want a guy with starter potential, that's the guy with starter potential right there. So that's why I didn't understand the pick. You trade up, you lose that extra 7th-round pick. Yeah, whatever, it's a 7th rounder. It's probably not going to make the roster past 2 years anyway. But come on now. If you're going to trade up, at least make it worth something. Hell, I thought they were probably looking at Smallwood there too.
Yeah, as much as I didn't like the last pick in terms of who the player was and what the player brings to the table, I didn't like this pick in terms of value. This is a guy you could have had later. He's not strong in the box. This is not a guy who's an elite athlete. He does give you a little bit of versatility. Like you were talking about him playing the wheel a little bit earlier. He can play as an inside when they shift over to a 34 scheme. So it gives you some versatility in terms of depth in multiple schemes. But mostly he's a special teams player who's going to get some rotational snaps, on first and second down. That type of guy. So, I think he'll be okay because he can contribute on special teams, and he gives you a blow as far as getting some of those other starters off the field for a play or two on first or second down. But overall, this guy he's not a guy who's going to crack the starting lineup anytime soon. But the value here, there were other players he could have had that I think would have made more of an overall impact. So that's why. That's the reason I didn't like this pick, just the value of the pick. I still think the player is going to be on the roster as long or longer perhaps than Ricardo Allen, but this isn't a guy who's cracking the starting lineup anytime.
I agree with that completely. But in my head, I kind of flip the pick of him and the pick of Smallwood, and I think it makes much more sense that way.
I agree.
Like, I kind of imagine Smallwood as the 168 pick, and then Sproul as the 253, and then it makes a little bit more sense if I do that in my head as the overall draft, because Smallwood was just great value in the 7th. I don't understand why he fell.
I don't either. He was a guy I was looking at. Another guy I was looking at here locally for the Denver Broncos, Smallwood. I think he fits in with what Jack Del Rio does on defense, and I think that he would have been a good fit here. I was kind of perplexed as to why they didn't go after him. There's got to be something out there, and I'm assuming it's medical because I haven't heard anything else. A reason as to why he slipped.
Well, off the field, he's perfect. He's two-time captain. He's got high GPA. He graduated college in 3.5 years. The reason why he left Connecticut was the exact same reason Bruce Ellington left South Carolina. He graduated. He had nothing left there. What's the point of going to college for another year if you can't get a master's degree?
Right. I have a question for you guys. One of the reasons why maybe I'm trying to sit here and say, because I also heard Smallwood being much more highly rated than the 7th-round pick, but one of the things I sort of noticed about him was maybe he's not the guy that can play every down. And maybe NFL teams, for once in the history of the world, are starting to figure out, hey, why are we drafting these two-down guys high? I think that's one of the reasons why Lewis Nix fell. I think the whole Twitter, thing is overblown. I think it's just the fact that he's probably a two-down player. And so, do you guys think Smallwood could be an every-down player, or do you think he's kind of more in that, two-down sort of thumper type of role?
I think if there was a guy who could beat out starting three-down linebacker, middle linebacker role, it's Smallwood. He's great at shedding blocks. He's very intelligent. Leader on the defense. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I love Paul Warlow. I don't think that he's going anywhere. But I think if there was a guy who could do it, it'd be Smallwood. I think there's very little drop-off, depth-wise, from Warlow to Smallwood. I think because of Smallwood and Sproul getting picked, Akeem Dent's gone this year.
I can see that. I kind of agree with Aaron's point. Right now, he is a two-down guy, and he's really not a three-down guy unless you're running a zone. He's not a man coverage guy. His feet aren't quick. But I like I like him better than the previous backer they took. I look at this pick, and again, I'm a little perplexed as to why he slipped so low. Most linebackers that you're going to get out there are going to be two-down guys, early on. There's a very few three-down backers you get in an NFL draft, and most of them are gone by the second round. With Smallwood, I think that I think he can develop into a guy, but again, I think of him more as a zone backer or a two-down, downhill backer than I do a complete three-down linebacker.
But a role player in the 7th round still fits your draft philosophy. Like a two-down role player still fits your draft philosophy, for you at least.
Well, yeah.
400 snaps.
Right, and I absolutely agree. He could crack this. This is a guy who has the potential to crack the starting lineup versus some of these other guys I don't think that do. So.
Now, here's my favorite pick. A lot of fans are calling this guy the Brock Lesnar of the Falcons draft. So, the Beast Incarnate, Tyler Starr. For those wrestling fans who actually get that reference. 6'4", 250 pounds, 4'8", 415 shuttle, 664 3-cone, Aaron.
Okay.
The running joke on this show, Ben, for if you haven't listened in a while, is Thomas Dimitroff loves 3-cone times. Absolutely adores 3-cone times. So the 650 Desmond Salvord 3-cone, the 660 Tyler Starr 3-cone, these guys are the all 3-cone team is the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tyler Starr, my favorite pick by far in this draft. Pass rush specialist. Essentially, I think he could be the next Troy Beardman, but way better as a pass rusher. I think he's got 10-sack potential on top of good edge setting on the run and just solid underneath zone coverage for when he's got to play it. But I think for the most part, if Atlanta fans want a pass rusher to develop, I think it's either Tyler Starr or Jonathan Massaquoi. And if both develop, then it's going to be fun.
I can buy that.
Okay.
It's tough not to like Starr. The guy's got Patrick Kearney's motor of just never stopping, never ending. He's tougher than a $2 steak. For references for Ben. Tougher than a $2 steak. I mean, he's Tyler Starr. He's from South Dakota. What's there to do in South Dakota but play football?
Freeze your backside off, from what I understand. One of the things you made the joke about the 3-cone, and there is some correlation for outside backers and corners in the 3-cone to the career success in the NFL. So that may be something that Dimitrov may have seized upon. Harvard Sports Analysis Collective did some studies a while back on what combine events correlated to NFL success, and there is definitely correlation for, like I said, for backers and corners for the 3-cone. So that may be where that comes from. But I like Tyler Starr. He's a guy that he's a thumper. He's a hitter. This is a guy you got to put on special teams, turn him loose, and that kind of thing. He's going to be a depth guy for a while. He's raw. He played at a lower level of competition. Speed of the game is going to be a little different. He's going to have to get used to going against larger animals too. I mean, he was a big fish in a small pond out there in South Dakota, and now he's going to be a big fish. A small fish in an infinitely larger pond. So it's going to be a chance for him to grow. He's going to have to grow as a player and take to that coaching. But I like him. He's certainly a fan favorite. He's a guy that brings a little flair to the game, and I always like that. But overall, he's unpolished. He's raw. He's that ball of clay that coaches want, but he's not the finished product yet, which lends to the the value of the pick in terms of upside.
Yeah, I mean, upside wise, he's the next. I'm not going to say Jared Allen, but Troy Bierman with pass rushing.
I can buy that.
With the same kind of fan following that Bierman has. That's why people love Bierman, because he's the hardest working guy on the team. You see it every play.
Yeah, I'm not as in love with Tyler Starr as you are, Scott, but, then again, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt because you were the first to be in love with the Paul Warlow, and that proved to be right, so I will bow to your wisdom.
If there's one thing I know, it's linebackers, man.
Yeah, I look at him as Troy Bierman. I don't know if he's going to be a lot better than Troy Bierman, but, again, if he's just Troy Bierman as the 7th round pick, the second to last pick in the draft, that's a good thing. So, I'll take that.
I mean, Bierman started all of 2011, over half of 2012, would have been the 2013 starter, started back in 2010. Had he not torn his Achilles, he would have been the 2013 starter. Started in 2010, 2008, 2009, he was a role player while he learned and developed. I think Starr could be the same kind of, hey, just go get him and learn special teams role player early on.
Mm-hmm.
And then turn into that starter. I think Bierman comes back next year on a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal that's really a 1-year deal. And then when Starr's ready, hey, seamless transition from one to the other. Because they're the same guy. Only
I can certainly see that. I can see that.
Only Starr's a little bit bigger, got a lot more length to him. 6'4" with, what was it, 32.5-inch arms. That's a lot more length than Bierman carries at 6'2" with 31-inch arms. But overall, Starr is going to be a fun player to watch. I think we're going to see him in preseason, and he's going to be the preseason stud that everybody's happy about. Because, Aaron, that one guy that everybody loves in preseason, that's that undrafted or that 7th-round pick.
Yeah.
And people are like, just play him. He's going to be good, I swear.
Yeah.
Well, last year it was Warlow, and we were right,
Yeah.
which is rare, but we were actually right about him. I think this year is going to be Tyler Starr. Just put him on the field and have some fun with his motor. The only other thing that I'd want to go over here tonight with Ben is some of the undrafted guys. Now, Jeff Matthews, Jerome Smith, there's a couple interesting fits. Roosevelt Nix as a fullback. Geraldo Boldevine as a wide receiver. Jacob Pedersen, the tight end. Nosa Igwe, I hope I said that right, from Auburn. Brendan Daly from Hawaii, and then Tay Glover Wright from Utah State. Those are the guys that I kind of want to talk about. Thoughts on Jeff Matthews, quarterback expert Ben?
Well, I think he's probably the one with the best crack at making the team when you look at these guys overall. Matthews is more of a classic pocket passer. He's got a stronger arm than Matt Ryan. He's certainly unrefined, playing at Cornell against future senators and CEOs over there. But he's got a lot of upside to him. Think about Joe Flacco. Maybe take away a little bit of the the athleticism. When you look at Joe Flacco, that's not the first word that comes to mind, but his ability to escape the pocket really is kind of surprising. It'll sneak up on you. And Matthews isn't, he's not that guy as far as sprinting out of the pocket or anything like that. He needs to learn to manipulate the pocket better, use his feet a little better. But man, what a cannon he's got! He could throw any ball and put it anywhere on the field. And if you've got the patience and the time to sit there and develop him for 2 years, you're going to have somebody who can be productive long term.
Now, at running back, there's Jerome Smith, who I said he's a Jason Snelling kind of guy, 6 foot tall, 225, more of a thumper, not really a great receiver starting out, but could develop there. Snelling wasn't a great receiver starting out either, but a solid blocker in the backfield too.
Yeah, like I said, I was not aware that they had signed, and that makes sense then. He is kind of a thumper between the tackles kind of guy. He's never going to be that receiving threat out of the backfield, but he's a between the tackles thumper who can salt a lead away. I don't know if he's going to make the roster given what you got. Probably going to wind up being a practice squad stash if they stash a running back. So, is maybe an extended trial for next year for him if they don't get the back they want. But I don't think his chances of making the 53 are very good.
Well, last year the Falcons carried 5 on the 53.
Right. I don't think that's going to be the case this year.
Well, that's fair enough. At wide receiver, the name that stood out for me was Geraldo Boldevine out of Boise State, because he reminds me a lot of Brian Finneran.
Yeah. Again, we're getting into that territory where this is a guy who may be your 5th or 6th receiver if you carry 6. But this isn't a guy who's going to crack the starting lineup. Finneran was a fan favorite because of his hustle, his motor, and his willingness to go over the middle and put his body out there. Boldevine will do that as well, but this isn't a guy who's got the athleticism that Finneran had. I don't see him sticking on the 53 as well.
Now, Jacob Peterson out of Wisconsin.
I do see potentially him sticking.
You've got Toivola and Pasco ahead of him, and then after that it's Mickey Schuler and Andrew Zerba, and then his old college teammate Brian Wozniak he's competing against.
Right, and I do see him beating out all those. He'll probably be the 3rd tight end. Brett Bielema has a great history of developing tight ends. Some of them stick in the NFL, some of them don't, but he has a great history of developing tight ends, and I think as a depth 3rd tight end, I don't see a problem with him at all. This is a guy who can pass catch, he can block in line. He's not the more of the off the line Y that Lance Kendricks was. This is more of a classic tight end. So I think he has a chance to stick to the 53, and I think he probably will.
Now, Roosevelt Nix. They gave him a $15,000 bonus. And the Falcons had one fullback last year.
$15,000 bonus. Up front that looks like a lot for a UDFA, especially a fullback. But this is a guy who could stick. He's a thumper. This is a guy who paved the way for Dry Archer. But it's so tough to carry multiple fullbacks in the modern NFL unless you're the 49ers or a team that likes to run in the eye and play smash mouth football. And those teams are few and far between now. You got Seattle. You're looking at San Fran, and then after that, the teams that like to run, most of them like to run out of 21, like to run out of two tight end set, and don't like to run with the fullbacks. So, I like him. I hope he sticks. I wouldn't hold my breath.
Well, he's got to beat out Patrick DeMarco and Maurice Higgins, so maybe he does stick.
Potential, but again, fullbacks like that, these are guys that you have to. Most fullbacks have to get a little stronger before they come out of college. They don't just jump right into the NFL as far as that goes. It takes them a couple of years. They bounce around a little and then they stick. So, I'm pulling for him. I like him. I'm pulling for him, but he's not one I'd wager on if I'm a betting man.
Now, the other name that I brought up earlier was Noza Igwe from Auburn.
Yeah, the defensive end.
Just because there's some Auburn fans that probably watch the show, and I'm sure they're wondering.
Well, I hate to let him down. I think he overachieved with Ellis Johnson as the defensive coordinator there at Auburn. Ellis tends to get the most out of talent. Look at what he did at South Carolina before moving to that disastrous head coaching tenure at Southern Miss. Ellis tends to get the most out of people when he's playing for him on defense. When they're playing for him on defense, so I think he's kind of an overachiever when you look at when you look at what Auburn did last year. I don't think that he's a guy that's going to crack the roster. I think that you've got and this may sound funny, but I think Atlanta has too much pass rushing talent ahead of him for him to stick to the roster.
That kind of sounds off based on the need at pass rusher.
Yeah.
Right. Which should tell you my opinion on the player.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you seen Devontae Glover-Wright from Utah State? I know you're a Colorado State guy. So.
Yeah, I hear Colorado, Colorado State, Wyoming. I tend to get some good looks at some of these guys. So, one guy I did want to point out before we get there that I think may have a chance of making the roster, and this isn't just because of my previous ties to Arkansas, but Arkansas State wide receiver Julian Jones. This is a guy who's an athlete, ball of clay, and this is a guy who left Oklahoma, because he wasn't quite getting the reps, so he went down to Arkansas State to get some tries. I think that he could definitely be a factor there at the fifth, sixth receiver. So I wanted to plug him real quick while I had a chance.
All right, that's fair. I haven't seen enough of him. He had like 15 catches this past year.
Yeah, the system they're running there under Harsin, the Boise State system, really kind of limited his touches, and he did have a nagging injury that he was dealing with. So, Alan Muse was certainly ahead of him, but I don't think that he's really showcased his talents the way he could. I look for him to be like a camp surprise. He has surprising athleticism, and I look for him to be like a camp surprise when all's said and done.
All right, now the one final one. Tay Glover-Wright from Utah State, cornerback, 6 foot tall, 4.36. You've probably seen a little bit more than I have because I've seen 2 videos and that's it so far. And I see potential, but probably camp cut.
Well, he was kind of lost, maybe amidst some of the other players on defense there when in the discussions. He's got speed, he's got good hops. He's not the tallest guy, but he's got good length. I think that if you have a dearth of corner talent, this is a guy that's athletic enough to surprise in camp and maybe earn some spots. Probably a practice squad stash. I think there's upside and potential here. I just don't think he cracks the 53. I think he gets stashed on the practice squad.
Makes sense. All right, so it's been a full hour already.
Time flies.
Ben, I want to ask you one question about next year's draft. Because last year I asked you about Jadeveon Clowney and whether or not his stock would fall, and we saw kind of what happened. So it didn't fall, but it kind of fluctuated a little bit there for a little bit. So I want to talk about these quarterbacks. Everybody's talking about Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, Brett Hundley. Is Winston, because of his recent off-field issues, is he going to be the guy that's going to just get absolutely picked apart this year? And we're going to be talking about him like if he had only come out, because it always seems like there's always a quarterback in every class. If he had only come out the year before, he would have been a top 5 pick or something, and then he falls to late first or second or something like that. So is Winston that guy? Is it Mariota? Is it Brett Hundley?
Well, I think there's 2 of them there. Having gone over, I've already started on the 2015 quarterback class. I started about a month ago. I tend to get done fairly early with my evaluations. I know a lot of people take them all the way down to the wire. I try to get done with them as early as possible and step away so I don't get that paralysis by over-analysis. But so I've already started on the 2015 class. It's something I've noticed, a couple of things I've noticed about Winston. This is a guy he's a good player, but he looks to me like he may be kind of carried by the elite talent around him. Florida State is stocked. They are the deepest, most talented team in the country, top to bottom on their depth chart. It's not even close. I mean, the talent disparity that they had against Auburn, I don't think a lot of people realize just how much more talent they had on the field because of Auburn's coaching advantage. But I look at Winston. He's got a lengthy release, and that's a problem. Like there's kind of some Byron Leftwich comparisons there, and I think some of those are fair. Some of them may be a bit overblown, but I don't think he's the top guy in this class. I think he's late first round material. And that's having taken one deep pass. I'd like to take 3 passes of tape before I render a final verdict. And this is a freshman year of tape and 1 deep pass, and I'm just not quite seeing that elite tier. Maybe they're right below that elite tier with him. Hundley is the guy I think is going to fall. Hundley is the guy I look at and I see a ball of clay. I see athletic potential. I see the tools, but he's not putting it together. He's getting by on those gifts, and this is another guy who had a lot of talent around him at UCLA. He's getting by on those athletic gifts, and he's not really becoming a quarterback so much as he is an athlete dominating from the quarterback position, and that's a problem for me. I need to see development towards becoming a great passer. In the NFL, it doesn't matter how good an athlete you are at the quarterback position. Michael Vick was a phenomenal athlete. Cordell Stewart was a phenomenal athlete, but these are guys that long-term didn't make that elite quarterback status because they didn't have the elite quarterback mindset. They just had the physical gifts, and they couldn't put it together because they'd gotten by on the athleticism so long. Mariota's a guy who's shown a lot of poise, but again, this is a guy playing in kind of a gimmick offense that gives his receivers a lot of one-on-one to wide-open coverage. He doesn't have to make window throws, and that concerns me. Some of the guys I'm looking at that are maybe a little lower tiered than that, Bryce Petty, Connor Cook, these are guys I'm kind of throwing in the mix with those names right there as maybe that top elite tier that we're looking at. I think some of these guys, to answer your question, I'm sorry I'm going long-winded here, so, some of these guys are, yes, they're going to get picked apart. Short answer, yes, they are going to get picked apart. How well they stand up and survive, that remains to be seen.
Ouch. Ouch. So this quarterback class isn't exactly what it's going to be cracked up to be either, is what you're saying.
Well, none of them ever are. When you look at what's they're hyped up to be in the next year, I mean, since 1998 when I started doing this, you've had 2 classes like that. You've had I think it was the 03 class that had Rivers and Manning and Roethlisberger and those guys that was deemed to be pretty deep, and it turned out to be pretty deep. And then you had Luck, RG3, Russ Wilson, Nick Foles, that class. And those are generational classes. They come along once a decade. So that wait till next year the class is stacked philosophy is one of the worst philosophies out there, and you hear it all the time from the internet types, but you never hear it from teams. Teams are never saying, let's wait till next year that class is stacked. They're saying, is our guy here? If not, we'll check next year and see if he's there.
So you think that's what Houston did, is they said, well, our guy's not here, so let's wait till next year, and maybe Mariota can be the guy. And if he's not the guy, let's wait till the very next year when we know Hackenberg is the guy, because Bill O'Brien went and recruited him.
Yeah, potentially. I think that's kind of where they're at. Tom Savage, who they took, is already 24 years old. This is a guy who's coming into the league older than Brock Osweiler, so I don't think that I see certainly not a long-term answer. I think Fitzpatrick is more of a stopgap than he is, so I don't know what they're doing. I don't really know what they're doing down there in Houston. I'm not a fan of it. And then Andre Johnson, of course, today is saying he may want out, so I'm a little concerned. Bill O'Brien's pro tenure may have started off on shakier ground than his Penn State tenure, which may have been inconceivable when he took over at Penn State.
How does Andre Johnson already want out?
Andre Johnson's 33-year-old wide receiver. I mean, this is a guy who doesn't have much time left, and he doesn't like the direction the team is taking on offense early. If I were him, I would wait till camp. I would wait to get into some of these workouts to kind of make sure of that. But this is a guy who doesn't have much left in the tank, and he's saying, "Hey, I've been to the playoffs twice in a decade. I'd like to go win some championships."
So, the best thing they could do is let him get cut and come to Atlanta. Ever.
I would think Atlanta could make a trade, but then you're looking at one too many elite receivers on that team and probably too much money tied up there.
Andre Johnson, Ryan Mallett, August trade. You heard it here first.
You know what? I'm not saying no to that. At this point, I'd call it a long shot, but I would not say no to that.
I wouldn't say no to that if I was the Patriots.
Well, I mean, I'm saying that that's very possible that could happen.
Yeah.
I don't think either team would say no to that. If I'm the Texans, I'm getting ripped off, but
definitely.
Oh.
Only a little bit, okay? Not a lot. It's not like you're getting completely dominated, and thrown around.
What, Mallett versus Andre Johnson? I mean, Andre Johnson, you're getting, what, a top 10 receiver in the league. Ryan Mallett, you're getting a top 10, what, backup in the league?
Yeah, back.
Yeah, but let's be honest here. Do they have any semblance of a starting quarterback on that roster?
Fitzpatrick is better than people give him credit for. That's the only thing I can say. He's certainly not an elite starter. He's a bottom tier starter in the league, but he's better than people give him credit for.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I don't really
Look
see
what he
him.
did. Look what he did with Tennessee last year with that horrific, with a dearth of talent they have there, or had there, I should say.
Yeah, I would still go with the present tense on that one, but
Well, the good thing is Houston has a good offensive line. They have running backs, or they have Arian Foster, and they have two good receivers. So basically, Fitzpatrick has to do what he hasn't been able to do and not throw a billion interceptions this year, and he'll be all right.
Well, and I think this is the first time in his career he's going to be able to build off play action. He hasn't really had that ability with the run game, of course, in previous stints. So I think this is the first time he's really going to have the ability to build off play action. I think that'll help with trying to squeeze the ball in, and his problem with trying to squeeze the ball in everywhere.
I think he's also probably got the best offensive line and receivers he's ever had. I mean, because Brown, Suafilo, Myers, and then Jones and Brooks from left to right. That's a pretty solid offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And then
you got Foster and Dennis Johnson in the backfield right now.
Yeah, I mean, you've even got Brennan Williams as a potential starting right tackle. And then, Foster, Andre Brown, Dennis Johnson. Grimes and Graham had solid end of the year last year. They took Alfred Blue in the late, in the 6th round.
He's an also-ran. Anyway, hey fellas, I hate to cut this short, but I'm gonna have to bounce here in just a few. I apologize. I got an old lady waiting.
You're not exactly cutting it short. You gave us over an hour. So yes, we've been at this for over an hour. We want to say thank y'all for listening in. You can find me at Scott Karasik. You can see it right there. Ben's got his Allbright. It's at Allbright NFL. Aaron Freeman's at FalcFans. You can always hit the show up at Falcons PFC.
Well, I thank you, Aaron, for having me on. I thank you, Scott, for having me on, and I hope we can do it again, gentlemen.
All right. Look forward to next year.
Definitely.